So, we've kind of covered all of this stuff up through you getting caught, but I want to back up. I mean, we keep jumping forward, which is great. I'm fascinated by this story. Backing back up, though, just to get a sense of how the migration element of this works, and you have so much knowledge to be able to tap into here. So you had done your couple of dry runs with Joe, and then you got sent out to do the set of runs that you did solo. Did you feel prepared to do what they were sending you out to do, or was it kind of flying by the seat of your pants, knowing that if things got goofed up, you have federal prison time, and that's scary?
It's a little bit of both. I would say it's, like going into any entry-level job. It helped that I had a little bit of a background already in illegal activities. I had been through homelessness a little bit in high school. Was running with the wrong crowd at some point. Just got involved in various bad things growing up. So I felt like I had a little experience with evading law enforcement, keeping my head down, knowing what to look for, protecting myself physically. I felt like I had. So I did come in more prepared than I would say the average candidate that they pull off the street or off social media.
This is what I want to jump into. One of the big things is, it sounds like you may have come into this with maybe a little bit different direction from a lot of people. What is the social media aspect to what they do recruitment-wise?
So a lot of the time, I'm sure you can randomly, there are suggestions in Instagram or Snapchat, just random people you can add. And I believe what they do is they start mass adding people. They just want to reach as many as possible. And they'll usually
indiscriminately? They just add.
They'll usually make a post, just a general post. And I never personally saw this, but I know this is super common. This is how almost everyone gets recruited. They'll make a general post. Who wants to make some money? You have to meet some requirements, and people will obviously start sliding up anytime you post something like that on social media. Starts gaining traction, picking up some attention, and I guess from there they weed through and see who they think would be able to keep their mouth shut and who's stupid, who's not stupid, who's going to draw attention to themselves, who's going to be flashing their cash after they get paid.
Are these interviews that they do? Like call them in and meet them at a restaurant or something? What does that process look like?
Well, I'd assume, because like when I met Daryl, what had happened was I just sat down with him in his Jeep and we kind of talked. I did some cocaine in front of him, but that was not related to like screening or anything like that. It was offered. He was high at the time. We were having a discussion.
You don't think that had any effect on him becoming more comfortable with you?
It might have been a bonding thing. I was always unsure of what exactly was going on because I felt like it wasn't normal for someone a couple positions up to just be associated and hanging out with me for long periods of time when it's not directly related to work.
We had established that Joe was somewhere around 23, 24. Yes. How old was Daryl?
Oh, I never knew his exact age. I never even knew his full name. I would guess no later than 30, 32.
Okay, so
no
early
older
30s.
Than early 30s, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But a bit older than Joe.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. You could tell by his face, like he wasn't in his early 20s or anything like that. But like I said, at the most, I wouldn't have put him past like 32 or so.
Okay. Digging a little bit into his background, had he been involved in doing this cartel smuggling work for a longer period of time?
I'm going to assume so because it's pretty hard to accumulate 3 cars that are, worth a decent amount of money by that age. I'd never been to his house or anything, but it was pretty obvious just kind of by his demeanor and mannerisms. There were small clues here and there that this guy had a lot of cash to throw around. I believe the reason why he wasn't purchasing super extravagant cars necessarily, even though they were nicer cars, was that starts to draw a lot more attention. You know, if you're driving a green Lamborghini down the street than just
Okay.
a Mustang or a Jeep. So that led me to think he'd accumulated quite a bit of money, but he was being smart about how exactly he was flashing and showing it, you know?
He
to
wasn't
minimize
actually
questions being
running
asked.
drugs or migrants. He was in charge of people who were in charge of people.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm assuming the order to get the guns maybe even came from someone above him who was in charge of whatever kind of violent operations they have going on that
Okay.
I don't care to know about.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the sense that you got with the organization was that there was you as a lowest level.
Yes.
Do you have a sense of how many other people were being run by Joe? Just trying to get a sense of the scale for how many people were moving migrants across for this cartel, at least in that location. If you don't have a sense of that, that's fine.
I know there was definitely a few other people involved, but I couldn't tell you. Honestly, everyone
They
stays
kept you
pretty
sheltered from each other?
separated. And I
Okay.
think that's for everyone's own protection.
Yeah.
Just, you know, because if a group starts hanging out or starts associating more with each other, it's obviously safer if you're running an operation and people have minimal information on each other, especially if they don't, you know, they've never met, you don't know what that
Okay.
person's about. And I think it keeps it a little safer for people because the more involved you get, you know, on a personal level with work colleagues or whoever, the more potential there is for elevated emotions or people slipping up or, you know, someone turning nasty if they get caught and maybe they have a grudge for whatever kind of reason and related to that interpersonal relationship. So it really is best to just keep everyone separated as much as possible. And I think that's what they tried to do from what I gathered, what I seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The
Just eliminating risks, you know.
on the Mexican side, beyond the coyote, or coyotes that you never got to see, was there any other people involved, or were there any other people involved in what was happening, or was this mostly Americans crossing over to the Mexican side to get the migrants and then bringing them across?
I'd say it's about 50-50 partnership. You know, there are understandings on both sides that, you know, we can mutually help each other or, you know. But yeah, I would say it's pretty equal. I can't really recall one side doing a lot more than the other. Everyone kind of has an understanding that there's things to be gained if everyone works together, you know, and sometimes sacrifices have to be made to make things look good to the people who aren't involved or, you know, the people at top who need to make sure their quotas are being met for however many people they catch or arrest that year, that month, whatever. But yeah, it seems about pretty equal, not really one
Okay.
side doing a whole lot more than the other.
On the recruitment side for the low-level people, were there ever Mexicans who were moving migrants across, or is this just Americans that are making these runs?
I believe it was just Americans. I never saw,
Okay.
yeah, I never saw any actual Mexican citizens living in the U.S. that were going back and forth and doing this.
Okay. Were you ever picking people up who had already crossed, maybe gotten through a spot where there's no fence or some other way of getting across the border, and then you would pick them up on the American side and then take them to a drop house?
I did pick up in Texas. I did pick up in Texas in Rio Verde. I did pick up one time.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the story there? How had they gotten across? And you just got a set of coordinates that were in the U.S.?
Yeah. They obviously, like I've said, there's a communication, there's a language barrier. I don't really talk to these people. They don't talk to me. I don't know much about their story usually.
But you picked them up relatively close to the border.
Yeah.
They had crossed somehow.
Yeah.
You got coordinates. Go to this field.
I don't know how they got across.
Right, and then you were there. You picked them up, and you had directions like normal to take them to whatever drop house that they were set to go to. Was the pay the same to pick them up in the U.S. versus picking them up in Mexico?
Yeah, because they're not paying you for distance, they're just paying you per head. So however many heads you get successfully on your trip, that's what you earn, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
It's like being paid, say if you're a package delivery driver, you get paid per packages you deliver, not the distance you're driving, if that makes sense. You
Absolutely, yeah. The total amount of money that you would make in a run, it sounds like it might have been around $2,000 to $3,000 per head.
It varies. There was a shit time when I only got $1,000 for each person. I think I had 4 people that day. But there's times where I'd make $3,000 a head.
Okay.
Know? So.
Do you know what went into why you would make more money versus less money?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
They just
I
tell
have no
you,
idea.
okay, this was a lower paid thing. Here's how much money you're going to get.
Yeah.
What did that look like? When
Getting
would you
paid?
get paid? In what format? How would that transaction take place?
So there's obviously you get them all the way to the drop house, your drop location. It's usually a hotel, a motel, or some kind of shady apartment complex. And I never know what goes on behind the closed doors, but they're safely inside, and usually there's like a brief waiting period. You'll sit in the car for maybe 30 or 40 minutes after that. And
Outside of the location that you dropped them in.
And
okay.
you'll meet, I would meet Joe at this point. He would meet me, whoever, they would be inside with whoever. And yeah, I don't know what would happen. We would always have to wait for some reason. I never understood why. But like I said, there's that brief period of we wait 30 or 40 minutes, and then he would usually pull out a stack of cash. It was all 100s and 50s. I never saw anything below a $50 bill in any of the money he would hand me. And he would sit right there in his truck, and he'd count it out on the dash in front of me, 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. And then you get handed a big stack of $100 bills, or sometimes it's hundreds and 50s if they ran out of 100s, and you're on your way. You're home free. You did 14 hours of work, and you're walking away with a few $1,000s, you know,
Wow.
in cash, off the books.
Yeah.
No taxes.
So then you would go home and wait for them to
And
message
return.
you again?
Yep.
How often would that happen?
Well, you can work more frequently. Like, I could have gone every single week if I wanted to, but obviously, like, the more trips you take, if you're not spacing it out correctly and you're going to draw attention to yourself, like I said, they do make notes of, like, if they think you're suspicious and they, like, start to notice maybe a car go through a few times, like, they do, I know, make notes of things like that. So you do want to try and space things out a little more. Personally, that was what I wanted to do, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Just minimize drawing attention to myself, because if I'm running back and forth frequently, I don't have anything to show for it, you know? I don't have tourist souvenirs or a suntan or anything like that. That looks a little strange, so I would try and space it out. I could have gone every week if I wanted to, but I tried to wait between calls a little longer.
So I'm guessing that if they don't have enough people who want to do enough runs, that's when they would reach out, or maybe just always have some type of reach out effort and have people.
They always have enough people. There's never not enough people. It's actually become so bad because the outreach is working so well on social media, because they're able to reach so many people. It's becoming more and more frequent. You see 18, 19, 20-year-olds, you know, stupid college kids getting caught up, not realizing, I guess, the depth of not only what they were doing, but who they were actually involved with. Just not realizing the gravity of who these people are and what they actually do. Because you don't think too hard about it when you're 19, you're getting $4,000 in cash in one day, you know. You just accept the money and you go home.
Do you think the cartel is trying to get a certain demographic, more guys or more girls, or a certain clean-cut look, or is there a sense that you're getting that they're gunning for in terms of their social media outreach?
I would say they definitely do look for younger people, and in my personal opinion, it is better to have females, because I have noticed women are, and there's no statistic on this, but this comes from my experience in prison, being in multiple prisons. Women are less likely, for some reason, to start opening their mouth and talking once law enforcement threatens them. I've just noticed that for some reason women are less likely to snitch. I don't know why, and I can't prove it, and there's no statistic, but it's something I've personally noticed. Obviously, you want people that look a little more clean cut. By the time I'd started, I was dabbling with drugs, but it hadn't reached full blown, like I looked like a junkie yet. And then by the time I did get to that point when I got arrested, I was already, I would say I had Daryl's favor a little bit. I don't think it mattered to him at that point what I looked like, even though I was starting to look suspicious. But they do go for more of a clean-cut, younger kid look, or, someone who just looks like a college kid. They don't want junkies out running around doing this job.
So maybe somebody who would realistically, or maybe at least understandably, be going to Mexico, have a good time for the weekend, come back.
They love minors. I forgot about that. They love to recruit minors, like 15, 16, 17-year-olds, like people like that. Well, not 15.
With driver's
15-year-olds
licenses.
can't drive. But like 16, 17-year-olds, they love to recruit minors because the police, from what I've heard, are more likely to let them go. And I've heard a few instances like that. Even Joe had told me at one point, like, we love the 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds because sometimes they just let them go. They get the migrants, they say, don't f***ing do it, and they let them go.
Get out.
Yeah.
In part, maybe because if they do go after them, try and press charges, they're getting charged in juvie court, getting out in a short period of time anyway. Get out.
They love the minors. That's what would told me.
Wow.
That's actually what they prefer,
So they try to go after
riskier.
People who aren't going to get charged as adults.
Because, sometimes they just let them go, or even if they don't let them go, they obviously, a 16-year-old isn't going to get as much time for committing the same crime as, say, a 35-year-old,
Okay. Now, the kids that they're recruiting, what kind of family backgrounds are they coming from?
Every kind you can think of. You got clean-cut college kids. You have people who are involved generationally in this kind of thing. They grew up around it, their parents grew up around it, and it becomes their way of life, and they think it's normal. They introduce their children into it, or their nephews, or like a lot of people in the cartel are like, I got here because of my uncle, or my dad, or my whoever, It's usually like not always, but they do kind of come from everywhere. It's a little bit of everyone. But I know a lot of people are connected through family ties somehow usually,
Okay. So I guess that leads me to another question.
Generational crime.
Yeah, so it sounds like there may be smuggling that you can do for the cartel, but then also maybe, the ability to graduate into being a soldier or somebody who does other type of work for the cartel once you've kind of shown that you're reliable, honest, whatever, and you've done the smuggling thing, that you have avenues of opportunity to get involved in other areas.
The only things I could personally confirm for a fact that they're involved in, like I said, there's something with the AKs. I don't know exactly what they use them for. I know they run kilos over, and I know they run immigrants, but they have their hands, the cartel has their hands in everything, so I know that wasn't the extent of what all they were doing. I was only seeing a small percentage of what was really going on. It's a huge operation. I couldn't even tell you the rest of all what they do, but I know that I only saw a small part of it.
So you really only had contact with Joe and Daryl?
Yes.
And that was about it?
Yep.
Okay. Question
I know Daryl wasn't at the top, but he was just
a ways up. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think was happening with the migrants once you would drop them off at the safe houses? Did you get the sense that they were just economic migrants coming over to get a job, or were these people that maybe the cartel was going to be doing something with, forcing into a particular type of labor maybe?
I do get a sense that maybe there were things, there was something darker going on, I felt like. I've told myself, I try and convince myself a little bit, even justify it, that I was helping people, hopefully get from one country to a different one where they can have a more a higher quality of life, more opportunity, more chances. They're safer. You know, their country's not as corrupt or war-torn, or the law enforcement isn't as bad. I like to tell myself that, but at the end of the day, you don't know. And I know a lot of these people, think about it, you don't get paid a lot in Mexico. They don't get paid a lot of money over there. So what, if you had a job, you know, say working in the U.S. and you needed to save up $10,000, you know, say it takes you 2 years to do that in the U.S. Well, it could take you 8 years to do that in Mexico, just because you're not making as much money. So I know a lot of them are desperate to get out of their situation quickly. So they'll pay off whatever fees they can with the money that they have. And then the deal is that you come over, we're going to set you up with some kind of work, whatever that may be, whether it's physical labor, whether it's something else for specific types of women or girls or underage girls or whatever it is. And the deal is like, you work this off, like we've discussed, you work this off until you've paid off your debt to us. And if you try to get away without paying off your debt, we're going to get you.
Wow. And this was something that you had heard.
These aren't the people you with, so you sit there and you work it off, whatever it is.
You had heard Daryl or Joe talking about this aspect of what was happening? Or this was a sense that you got?
I know this is a general thing that they do.
Okay.
And I never ask too many questions once you see them go into the drop house. I had asked Joe my first time. I was like, what happens next? What are they doing there? And he had told me something to the effect of, don't worry about it. So I never got a clear answer about what happened to my people afterwards. So that part does weigh on me a little bit. I don't know exactly what I was bringing these people into. I was never filled in on the blanks about what happens once that door closes behind them.
You didn't get the sense, though, from what we talked about before, that you were transporting women that would be sex trafficked or anything like that?
I hope not. I hope not. It didn't seem like it to me. I didn't really see any major signs of that, but like I said, you never know, and you can't really ask too many questions, so you kind of just accept what you can see, and then you stop thinking about it after that.
Right. Wow. Wow. Okay. Are there any elements that we didn't touch on that you think would be useful or important to know? I guess on some level, your story took you through federal prison and then a life change, and now you're on a totally different track.
Yes.
Obviously very positive.
Prison, the point, when I do discuss my prison time, I do have not a lot of nice things to say about the system, but I don't want it to be misconstrued that I believe I didn't deserve to serve time, or I didn't deserve to be punished or locked up or anything like that, because I did deserve that. The system is extremely poorly run and managed, and it's not what people think it is. I have a lot of stories from prison that would make people pretty angry, I feel like, if I were to expose what actually goes on in those places. Even if you are extremely conservative, maybe I would say, and you strongly believe like punishment is the best way, there are a lot of things I could tell you that would piss you the off, you know? You pay $91 billion, taxpayers, you know, annually to house federal prisoners, and most of us do not have access to get an education, drug counseling classes, therapy, life skills, anger management, parenting classes, any of the things or resources that you would need to change who you are and the way you're living. Anything you would need to better yourself, you probably don't have access to it. And you can't, I feel like, realistically expect people to change without resources, you know? You're throwing them in a tank and telling them to figure it out, which some people do, but there's a reason why 80% of people end up going back within 1 year, because our system does not work. But anyways, my point is not to bash the Bureau of Prisons, the government, the prison system, law enforcement, any of that. We have good people, you know, serving in every side of our country. And it changed my life. Prison was a blessing for me. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it gave me an opportunity, and it was so perfectly timed in my life that it ended up physically saving me from my drug addiction, It prevented me from killing myself. I'd been suicidal at the time, and I was able to restore my physical and mental health, rebuild a relationship with my mom, reevaluate what had got me into a building where I was sitting next to and having lunch with a child molester on my right and a murderer on the left. It makes you think, what the f*** am I doing? What do I need to do differently? So it gave me one of the best opportunities I could ask for that I didn't know I needed. It helped me a lot, so I would not take any of it back. I wouldn't take anything back.
Has there been any attempt by Joe or Daryl or anyone connected to them to get in contact with you post you getting out? They were just happy that you hadn't ratted them out, and as far as they were concerned, you were cut loose and on your own thing?
Yeah, I concocted this plan while I was in prison, and I partially tried to carry it out once I was released. I was pretty angry. I felt pretty betrayed by these people that I felt like I'd spent time hanging out with and, getting to know and working with, earning money next to them. I felt pretty betrayed that nothing. I went into prison. I think I was a decoy. For a bigger load to go through. And then after that, there was no, they didn't try to ask me if I was okay. They didn't put money on my books, anything like that. I was angry. And my plan actually was to extort Joe once I got released and say, I will give up all of your personal information and all of the details of this operation. I will give them your name. I'll give them Daryl's name, unless you give me X amount of money. Obviously, I was really angry while I was locked up, and I got released. I'd worked through most of my anger at that point, and I made an attempt to contact Joe, just to tell him basically what had happened. He read my message on, I believe, either Instagram or TikTok. I think it was TikTok. He read my message on TikTok and blocked me.
Okay.
So that was the end of that, and
Okay.
I never pursued anything further because I didn't care at that point.
Okay. And you think that they were likely still involved with doing what they were doing when you knew them? And you were in prison for how long?
Almost 2 years, 21
Okay.
months.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Wow, what a story.
Thank you.
What a story. Thank you so much. I learned
Thank
a ton.
you.
If you don't mind, potential for doing a follow-up interview at some point in the future, I will come up with more questions. I'm ranging along the border now, between now and the election. So this is Pacific to Gulf of Mexico. I'm pursuing all the aspects of what's happening at the border with migration. Of course, that's leading into lots of cartel stuff. There's some drug stuff associated with that. Of course, I don't want to just focus on that. I'm also looking at geography, history, culture. I'd like to start doing some food, like the best tacos I can find in any of these places. It's just such a fascinating area of the world that I think is underreported on, in part because there's so much fear around what's happening with the cartels.
Yes.
And in the past, there's been these really big violent outbursts. I mean, we are 6 years running where there's been more than 30,000 homicides in Mexico.
Yeah.
So
That's how they operate. I would say what you essentially said, they operate based on fear, hence the AKs. It's a control thing, They like when people are afraid of them. Even just the normal citizens, I feel like they do enjoy terrorizing people. It's how they maintain their power. So I think you're right about that. It's interesting to think about.
There's one aspect of this that I'd like to delve into a little bit more, and that's the corruption on the U.S. side. I think that people make the assumption that if you wear a uniform in the United States, you're basically trustworthy, that
No.
the assumption is that you're not getting bribed, you're going to enforce the law. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen and experienced in terms of U.S. official, police or Customs and Border Patrol corruption that you were exposed to and saw?
You go into any kind of law enforcement for 3 reasons. You're power hungry, you want to make the world a better place, or you want in on whatever's happening. Personally, there's a lot of different levels I've seen this on. One example, being in prison. So any contraband, and contraband obviously is defined as anything you are not allowed to have inside the prison, which is pretty much everything except food and basic hygiene items becomes contraband. Any contraband you manage to smuggle into the inside is worth 3 to 5 times as much as it is on the outside, because obviously it's more of a hassle to get, say, marijuana into a federal high security prison than it is to go out on the street and buy some marijuana. So not only does the value triple, quadruple, whatever it is, the prison guards recognize that, and they know that. They're very aware of this. And, think about it. There's no one coming in and out of the prison, right? How are drugs getting in? The prisoners are f***ing locked inside 24 hours a day. How are the drugs getting in? Well, the guards are being paid to smuggle it in, and they get a big cut of whatever. Like we had meth, K2, heroin. You can get pretty much anything you want in prison for the right price. They even just had like nicotine, normal things like that, which I bought a few times. But yeah, the guards are, going out. They're operating with wherever he's getting these drugs from, and they're smuggling them inside to the prisoners, where they're paid off by the prisoners' people on the outside. The prisoner makes a call on the phone or maybe the tablet. There's always a code used. You obviously don't say you don't say anything explicit, because all of those, they're all recorded and listened to. They listen actively to the conversations. It's not like they just record them and then maybe look back at them if they need to. They actively listen a lot of the times. So there's some kind of understood code at that point where that prisoner's people on the outside will then pay or cash app whoever, this prison guard, this correctional officer. At that point, the prisoner receives the stuff, the officer has their cut, and the inmate starts selling everything for triple what you would on the outside, making a shitload of money.
Okay.
So that's like one example, but they do it all the time. It's a good way to make lots of fast money.
Okay. In terms of law enforcement personnel on the outside, this would be Border Patrol, this would be local police, maybe even other federal agents.
I do want to lead with...
Don't say anything dangerous.
No.
Okay.
I do want to lead with the fact that I do not like that saying, all cops are bastards, because that is not true. Obviously, there are good people and bad people in pretty much any field or industry you can imagine. But there is that aspect when it comes to law enforcement. It does attract a certain type of person, given that you, in this job, have a lot of power over people's lives. I feel like. And like, for example, I had my closest friend in there, B, let's call her B, in prison. Her arrest with Border Patrol resulted in, there was no female officers on the scene, and obviously I was not there firsthand, but I do trust her account of this story, because she's one of the most trustworthy and honest people I've ever met in my life. Which I know might sound funny given that we're in prison, but that was her character. There was no female officer on the scene. She was given a pat down by the male officer. She had originally said, "I'm not comfortable with this. I don't want you touching me. I want a female officer." And they had laughed in her face, and apparently the male officer had reached under her shirt and was squeezing her breasts and like groping her butt, just in a non-search way, and she was crying, and she was actually, her lawyer had discouraged her from taking it to trial, because her and her wife, B and B's wife, had wanted to take this case to trial. They got caught up together. B's wife had witnessed the Border Patrol agent sexually assault her, basically, with his colleagues present. They wanted to take it to trial, and I remember being told about this in the first holding facility we were at. B was very, very upset, because she had came back from a visit with her attorney, who had discouraged her from bringing this to court, bringing attention to what had happened to her, because it would result in her being retaliated against by the judge or whoever was up, and she would get a longer sentence. And I have kind of a similar thing happen with me.
Okay.
But not to the extent of hers did. Mine was much less severe, but they do. My lawyer had discouraged me from, I was thinking about hiring a private attorney, because it took me almost 20 months to get sentenced. I was in holding for almost 20 months. They wouldn't tell me, and everyone wants to go to prison.
As opposed to getting
They
your...
backdoor it. It's called backdoor sentencing, which is illegal. It's where they sit and hold you for your entire sentence. Say they want you to do 2 years, right?
So you had a public defender,
Uh-huh.
and essentially what had happened was they're backdooring your sentence
Purposely, though.
purposely.
They want you to serve all of it. And the reason that is, like I've told you, you cannot parole out of the feds. However, you do get credit if you complete. You have to hit the BOP. Let me back up. I was in a holding facility. You have to touch BOP, standing for Bureau of Prisons, to have access to mental health treatment, classes, education, therapy, drug treatment, anything useful, basically, any kind of resource. You have to touch BOP, because private holding facilities are allowed to do whatever they want. They can make their own rules because they are privately run. They have to adhere to certain restrictions, and they do come in and do inspections, the U.S. Marshals, but there's really not much that can be done, even if they are breaking the rules or are violating. For example, we tested positive for feces in our water like 3 different times before the Marshals threatened to move us to a holding facility in Detroit, which was the next largest facility that could house that many inmates. They were going to shut our private facility down because they were like, you guys, like, there's in the water, like it's completely unsanitary, like they're drinking like iron and rust are coming out of the sinks and the showers, like this is not safe.
This is in Texas?
Yeah.
Okay, so just correct me if I'm getting this wrong. You wound up going to a private prison.
Yes.
Instead of going to a federal prison.
Yep.
You were doing federal time.
Yes.
But you were being held in a private prison where you didn't have access to the extra things
I was
that you
serving
could have
federal
gotten.
time without federal resources, if that makes sense.
You would have had access to those resources, though, if you had been able to get into a Bureau of Prisons prison instead of being in a private holding facility. Okay.
But, for example, an our judge in particular, I'll change her name because she's had hits ordered on her by the cartel multiple times. They've tried to take her out because she's pissed everyone off with the way she's running her particular district. She's notorious for, it's illegal, it's called backdoor sentencing. Basically, if they want you to do 2 years, they'll hold you in that private facility for as long as they can so that you serve your full sentence in there with no resources. Because once you hit BOP and you start completing programs and classes and educating yourself and trying to prove to them that you're making a change or you're trying to return to society as a normal, productive, functioning citizen, you start getting time off. Like I said, you don't parole out early, but you do get, the maximum amount of time you can get off is 1/3 of your sentence. So if you're serving a 9-year sentence, the absolute most amount of time you can get off of that is 3 years taken off.
Okay.
But that's rare. You usually don't get the maximum amount of time taken off. But like I said, they hold you for as long as they possibly can, then they sentence you right at the very end of however much time they want you to do. And then by the time you've been sentenced, it's like, well, I've completed my sentence and you guys just have to release me now. It's time to go home. And you didn't get access to any of those resources. You never got to touch the BOP, anything like that. That's what happened to me.
Do you get the sense that...
And you're told, do not hire a private attorney. Do not step out of line. Do not try and take it to trial. The feds have a 98% conviction rate, and they will retaliate against you. They're notorious for that. Even my lawyer told me, like, do not try and get a private attorney. She will retaliate against you. You will get a higher sentence, I promise you.
This is a public defender who's saying...
And I believed him because I'd seen it happen to other people. So it's very corrupt. It's a very charged system. There's a lot of power trips, a lot of pulling back and forth. And I knew a girl, a lady, older lady. She had been running drugs over the border. Very smart, one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life. Very big personality. She was hilarious. We struck up a little bit of a bond, I guess. She had enough money that she was able to hire a private defense attorney, private criminal attorney, who had told her, you get me, I believe it was $300,000. No, you get me $250,000 in cash. I will make sure you walk away from all of this with a clean record. It's the Freemasons. Is that what they're called? I don't know, but I know it's organized to the point where if you have a high enough powered attorney or if you have enough money, you can walk away.
Pull enough strings, bribe the right person.
Yeah, and she wasn't anybody famous, anybody notorious, somebody a high profile public figure, anything like that. She just had a significant amount of cash, and her lawyer told her, you get me this amount of cash, you will walk away from all of this with a clean record.
And?
I don't know what happened to her.
Okay. Do you get the sense that this is possible because of, and I'm just throwing this out there, federal prison overcrowding maybe, or maybe there's some effort to try and make sure that private prisons who might be making political donations, I don't know, just throwing ideas out there, need to have a certain amount of people in them in order to make the federal dollars.
Oh yeah, they have they're required, I think they need to fill a certain amount of beds. Like the place I was at, for example, though, was actually violating a lot of rules according to the U.S. Marshals, who are supposed to be monitoring how these facilities are being run. Supposed to be is the key word.
And it sounds like they were making some inspections and then threatening.
Yeah, but the problem is like, they give them like 8 chances, like, you better turn this around sometime within the next 4 times that we come here or else, kind of thing.
Okay.
But like our facility, for example, we had so many people and it was overcrowded, we ran out of bunks a lot of the time. So a lot of the girls would have to sleep in the eating area, the common area where we watch TV and eat food and where the microwaves are. So they had, I think, maybe like 20 to 30 girls sleeping there sometimes. And then once that common room was filled up, they said, we need more people, because obviously it's the more people they have packed in there, the more money they get per head. They get $150 per person per day. So if you do the math on it, it comes out to over $1 million a week for them at my facility. So they're getting upwards of 50 million a year, I think more than that. But so once they ran out of room in the common areas and all of the cells, and these cells are not big, they start putting people on the floor. They don't have bunks. They ran out of pillows. I went my whole entire prison sentence without having a pillow. I went 2 years without sleeping on a pillow because they didn't have the resources. And a lot of the girls, like I said, they run out of bunks. They put them right on the floor, and you just sleep on the floor in the cell. You'll have 3 or 4 people, like, to
on
the
a
point.
mattress?
Yeah, they just throw your mattress on the concrete, and so you have 3 or 4 people in a 2-person cell, in a small crowded cell that's meant to have 2 people. And they're not supposed to do that. I know that, so that's like a safety hazard when people are sleeping on the floor like that, and especially when the doors are all locked in.
And this is on the federal level.
Yep.
This isn't state prison where...
This is big time. This is the feds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the sense of the people that you were serving with? Did you have an idea of what percentage maybe were in there for drug stuff, maybe smuggling drug stuff, migrant stuff? Did you and then actual like property crime or person-on-person crime?
So I would say the particular area, the holding facility I was at, was obviously we were in Eden, Texas. So this is not super far from Mexico, but we're still obviously in Texas. Because of the geographical location of that, and the people that were being sent there, if I had to put approximate numbers on it, I would say 50% of people there were there for immigrants, maybe... Smuggling
immigrants in?
Yeah.
Not the immigrants themselves?
Yeah, and then I'd say,
Oh, sorry. So no immigrants or yes immigrants?
I'd say maybe 40 to 50% were there for running immigrants over themselves. They had gotten caught with the
doing
immigrants.
what you were doing?
Yes.
These would be generally low-level people, maybe sacrificed at a given time? Okay.
Yeah.
Young?
So I was the second youngest person in the
Okay.
facility I was at. There was one girl, the girl I met in Border Patrol, Angel. She spent that whole time with me. She actually ended up doing more time than me, even though we got arrested on the same day.
Oh.
We had pretty much the same case.
She was one of the ones that night?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So I went through my whole time in prison with Angel.
And you were
she-
19, 20 at this time?
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then kind of getting older from there.
I'm trying to think. So I got arrested. Yeah, I got arrested October 9th. So I'd been 20 for like 4 days at that point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But fuck, what was I saying? Oh, what were we talking about? Crap, I forgot. I lost my train of thought.
No. Okay.
Dang it.
So just the percentages of
percentages.
people. Yeah.
Okay, so I would approximately, if I had to put numbers on it, I'd say 40% of people were in there for the same crime I'd done. They got caught up running immigrants over the border. I'd say another 40% were drug-related crimes. They were caught smuggling keys or bricks, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
So it was about evenly distributed between immigrant runners and drug mules. And then you have the other 20% is mixed. White crimes. There was a girl I was a cellmate with at one point. She had figured out how to make a copy of a key that would open all the mailboxes somehow. She was incredibly smart. I think she may have been a little autistic. She wasn't very good at understanding a lot of social concepts. Very, very intelligent lady. She'd figured out how to make this key. So a small percentage of people are white-collar crimes like that, financial things. And then you have, because this is a high-security holding facility, and these people have not been sentenced yet, you do have a little bit of a mix of everyone. There's a few child molesters in there. There was a lady who had committed murder at one point. And yeah, that makes up the rest of the remaining 20%. It's just various other blue or white collar crimes. Some of them are horrible, some of them are pretty petty. I would say my crime was obviously still a crime and still something to be taken seriously, what I did, but there are people who are in there for darker, heavier things, and you have to realize that when you go in, that this is not just people like you who are trying to make a few extra dollars. There are people in there who are in for more serious things. You have to be aware of that. Situational awareness.
Okay. Was there chatter between all of you who were in there, kind of telling the stories of, hey, here's how I got caught?
Oh yeah.
Did you notice like similarities in stories between the people who were getting, maybe sacrificed to get a bigger load through? Did they have different things to say about their experience running migrants? I would assume that the people who were running drugs had already kind of graduated up out of running migrants or doing more menial things for the cartels.
Yes.
Most of these people, so this is maybe 80% of the people in prison, were there for cartel-related activity, it sounds like.
Yeah, so the people, that's one of the primary ways we pass time while incarcerated is discussing our lifestyle that led us to being incarcerated, our actual story of how we got caught up, the scales of our operations, what we're involved in, etc. So a lot of us do discuss that, but the people who are involved in drug crimes almost never discuss their stories, and they don't want to. And there is a reason for that, which I've kind of touched on already. Most of these people are looking at a minimum of 10 years. And it's horrible when you see, obviously, like I said, I don't condone criminal activity, and I believe there does have to be consequences if you're supporting a black market, especially if it's dangerous. And but it's horrible to see, a 24-year-old girl with 2 kids learn that she's going to be spending the next 17 years of her life incarcerated behind bars. She has young kids. They're going to graduate college and not know who the their mom is. They might FaceTime her over the tablet once in a while, but they're not going to grow up seeing their mom. There's no visitation in the facilities we're at. You can't see anyone.
Really?
You're not allowed to have any visitors.
You just disappear into a black hole.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that, so my crime, they only wanted me to serve about 2 years. But a lot of these people, these drug crimes, like I said, they don't want to have to Because the more you sit there and you think about, I'm doing 17 years, they don't like to discuss that, obviously.
Yeah.
You can almost never get the people caught up in drug crimes to discuss everything. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And like I said, the backdoor sentencing plays into that. If you are caught up in a drug crime, like I said, you're serving a minimum of 10 years most of the time. You're sitting in those holding facilities with no education, no resources, no ways to better yourself, nothing. For sometimes 4, 5, 6 years, I was in there with a girl who I had a little bit of a crush on. She was about 10, 12 years older than me, got caught up with some pretty serious drugs. She was told she was looking at 12 to 15 years were her guidelines. And she had already been holding facilities at that point for 4 years. She had no idea what she was going to get sentenced to. She hadn't been able to obtain her GED. She hadn't been able to attend substance abuse classes or further her education in any way. They cancel our rec a lot of the time, so you can't work out, which is a good way to pass time. And it's a good, healthy way to express yourself in there, because if you're not, think about it, people are stressed the out in prison. They have kids on the outside. They're worried about their money. They're worried about, I might be spending the next decade of my life in here. I got family out there. You know, they're stressed the out. And when you have that many people in such a confined area, and the prison guards don't give a they don't care if we're beating each other up or any of that. You know, I've seen people sliced, shanked, all of that, toothbrush shanks. They do not give a So when you have that many people stressed out and you take away a small outlet, like being able to go outside and work out, do some push-ups, run, do some pull-ups, you know, that doesn't help everyone inside. You know, that increases actually the violent incidents that we have, because you are not allowed to work out inside, which I actually got in trouble for multiple times.
Just doing push-ups or whatever?
They can put you in solitary if you work out inside. I don't know what the reason for that is, but I'd gotten in trouble for it twice while I was there. So it's like they take away everything from you, even your ability to go out and run a quarter of a mile, you know?
You got the sense that the people in the private prison would be interested in bettering themselves if they had the opportunity.
Yes, they're bored. Think about it. You're sitting there. You don't have, you can watch TV or you can read the Bible for 4 years. I don't understand. This is what makes me angry about the system. They sit there and they want to punish us for the crimes we've committed, and they want us to come out being better and being productive and not involved in the same lifestyle we were before. Yet they put us and keep us in these environments for years and years where you have no opportunity to learn something new, to get your high school diploma, to attend substance abuse classes, or to attend therapy to understand, you know, to unpack that trauma. If you look around, I'm pretty sure there's a statistic that's like, however many % of prisoners have been sexually or physically abused in their lives, and that's true. Almost everyone I talked to in prison had been molested, raped, beat up, neglected, or, you know, maybe their parents would use drugs with them at an early age, just from really young. Like, almost everyone in there has some significant form of trauma, and you are throwing these people into a crowded room with no resources, no outlets. There's no way for them to express themselves creatively or get that anger, that stress, that frustration out. And you're expecting them to change their entire life around after you hand them nothing. It's not like you're sitting in there with all these fun things to do. You are literally sitting in your cell. You can watch TV or you can read a book. And that's it. That is it. And my heart aches for those people who sit in holding facilities for 4 years, 5 years, just waiting to get their drug sentence, you know, to get their sentencing done, because they're sitting, that's 5 years of your life gone. What have you done? Nothing. And it's completely out of your control. You have to sit there and accept it.
Yeah.
And it's sad, because how do you expect people to change and come out and be better if you're not giving them any tools to do so? A lot of these people have grown up in this lifestyle in a specific way. They've been doing this for years. They've been in and out of juvie, in and out of prison their whole adult lives. You know, most of them, almost no one in there is a first-time offender. It's pretty rare to see someone, this is my first time locked up. Almost everyone in there, it's at least their second time around.
Okay.
The system is not working.
Okay.
That's my frustration.
But could potentially be working better if they had a chance to better themselves while they're in.
You treat people like people, not like their crime, you know?
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. Wow.
And obviously more worse crimes deserve harsher consequences, but I don't understand how it's helping the American taxpayer or anyone out on the outside to just throw people in and then they come out the same exact person they were before, if not worse, from all the trauma and the violence, the exploitation, the blackmail, the beatings, the rape, the sexual assault, the power trips between the prisoners and the guards. You come out a little more broken than you were before. I think, and this may sound dramatic, I think I may have come out with a little PTSD because I've definitely noticed changes in myself. My first week I got released, I could not sleep. It was so quiet. I actually just recently, like within the last month or two, learned to start being comfortable with the lights off in my apartment. I couldn't fall asleep with the lights off because they don't turn the lights off when you go to prison. You don't get to sleep in the dark anymore. I was on the top bunk most of the time because I usually had cellmates that were older than me, so they deserved the bottom bunk, you know. I'd be on the top bunk and the ceiling light, the LED light on the ceiling would be right in my face 2 or 3 feet away from me, and you just get used to sleeping with the light on all the time. They don't turn the lights off just for, you know, so they can do count every hour, and so they make sure, you know, it's easier if you got stabbed or whatever for them to see it. And I came out very different. I've always had, I would say, some degree of anger issues, but now there are certain things that trigger me heavily that I feel like a normal person would not be triggered by. If someone is standing too closely behind me in public, or if someone brushes against me, I get extremely angry to the point where I want to physically attack them. When people stand too close to me now in public, if someone puts their face too close to my place, too close to my face, I get extremely pissed off, and I start to feel myself feeling very caged in and angry, because anytime you sneak up behind someone in prison, or you stand close to someone like that in prison, that means some is about to go down. And there's social constructs out here. Obviously you can't run around beating someone up out here in the free world if they piss you off. You can do that in prison. So there's it's a culture shock almost when you come out, because it's like there's a whole different set of rules, and you have to adjust to society's rules, and society's not understanding. You just came from a place where if you cut in line, you can get stabbed in the gut, and the guards will run over to the scene and stare at you and talk about, oh, what should we do? Instead of maybe trying to plug the hole or rush them out to, you know, to medical, whatever. Like, they don't give a fuck, and it's hard, because I do feel like I was traumatized to some degree, because you see shit. You have some of society's most dysfunctional citizens locked in a room together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no rules, no boundaries, no outlets, no ways to express themselves, and no structure. And when you take all of that away from someone, and when you take away their purpose, because there's really nothing they can do or accomplish in there, you have a lot of really chaotic and broken and angry people, and obviously that leads to violence, physically, sexually, you know. It's just, it's a very broken place with a lot of broken people. It's dark in there.
Wow.
You see a lot of things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Man, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
That's, wow. Yeah, I don't want to keep taking advantage of your time here. I'm just so thankful that we've had the chance to talk and get this information out. I think this is a perspective that is rare, that somebody who's willing to talk like this. I'm glad we're keeping you anonymous.
Thank you for allowing me to share my story. The reason I do feel comfortable is because I have already served my time for my crimes. Obviously, if I hadn't been caught, I would not be comfortable sharing my story like this. But I don't have much to lose. I've already served my time, my punishment. They can't go back and retry me. But thank you for letting me get my story out there, because I feel like it's underreported on, like you've mentioned, and there's not many people are aware of what goes on behind closed doors once someone gets arrested, or even the process of what leads someone to that point in their life. There's not a lot of exposure, so thank you for letting me share my side of it.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure, my honor. This is great. Okay, well, let's end this here. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to break this into a few parts. This is a longer interview, but wow, I mean, just some incredible stuff. It sounds like we can talk again on some other things. I'm going to be ranging back and forth across the border, so I'll be back in Phoenix. I live here now. I'm going to be moving soon. My lease is almost up. So I'll be living out of Airbnbs basically between now and November and the election. So we'll see, when I can get back up here to Phoenix, and when I do, we can get back together and do this. Obviously, I won't have this apartment anymore, but this has been a nice little balcony to do an interview like this, especially because it's really windy. If we were to go out and do this in a more public spot, so this has been great. Anyway, thank you so much, and thank you everybody. We'll see you on the next one.